What's up, everyone? You're listening to the Grepcast from TSP LLC, bringing you a weekly look into the world of technology and technology-adjacent ephemera. My name is Adam Fisk, and today we are joined by fan favorite Kelly Ford.
Thank you. Hello.
Aww.
And as always, Michael Lowe.
The fan not so favorite.
Not
Hello.
this week.
You were fan favorite
your stock
last week.
dropped. So.
Oh, I see.
So before we jump into our episode today, I want to just commend whoever at the UN was listening to episode 34, Software as a Scapegoat of the Grepcast, as they have now, in a UN-based study, determined that female voice assistants fuel damaging gender stereotypes. This, we're not going to talk about it on the podcast because I think we talked about it quite a bit back in April. But this actually came to me through the MIT Technology Review. So we'll put it in the show notes, but it ain't just us that have thoughts and opinions on this one.
Thanks for listening, UN.
Thank
You for
the
listening.
UN. The UN.
I think they just have it on in the background.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's what's actually piping through the chambers when they're not in session. So
Absolutely.
So that said, first off in our kind of conversation today, we're actually going to talk a little bit about the inversion of our normal timeline of companies, where we talked about it with Amazon. We definitely talked about it with Apple, where a company starts out by making stuff, tangible things, and then pivots right into services. So be it software as a service, TV as a service, games as a service, all these different things. But now music as a service giant Spotify is getting into the physicality with their literal thing called Car Thing. This is an article that's coming to us via The Verge by Ashley Carman about Spotify now testing a new physical unit, a device that plugs into your 12-volt outlet in your car and connects to your car and phone over Bluetooth. So you can now say the thing you have always wished to say, which was, "Hey, Spotify."
And is that like the main benefit? So, I mean, I'm reading this article and I'm thinking, like, why do I need the car thing? Which,
Right.
by the way, I hope they didn't spend a lot of money.
Oh, they did.
On somebody, yeah.
I
making
actually
up
like
that
Car
name.
Thing.
Car Thing is so good. I am very here for it.
I kind of love it.
Okay. You know,
Is that 2-1?
It's 2-1 in this
Yeah.
case.
It is.
Yeah,
It is.
I think it just goes
Yeah.
back to what we've been yelling about, where in that fourth industrial revolution, it's data mining. Spotify realized that they have spent, I forget what the exact number, let me see if I can get an excellent scroll. I did, $500 million on podcasting. And they realized that that's data that they're not seeing through their traditional means. So if you're
Right.
connected to a car and going through like a different system, they can't see what you're listening to. And the podcasting market, luckily to us, is still on the rise. That bubble has not yet burst. So they have the Car Thing. So you can now officially say, "Hey, Spotify, put on the latest episode of My Favorite Murder," and they will understand how long you listened to that episode.
This feels like another one of those scenarios where the customer is not the audience. The R&D for the company is. Because I was trying to think of who wants this. I'm also not a driver. I haven't driven in 20 years, maybe. So I'm not
Whoa.
I know, you really don't
Not
want me
the
on
target
roads.
audience for the Car Thing.
But, you know, I've been a passenger and I'm trying to think of who would actually want this. Why would they need it? Why would they want one more thing in their car? Tell me.
My
Adam.
lizard brain says me.
Tell me why.
Well, we listen to Spotify in the car all the time, and from a safety point of view, like I have just like a whatever normal Mazda. I don't have CarPlay, Apple's thing in my car, and if I'm changing,
CarPlay.
If I'm changing like a playlist or a podcast, or I just want to skip a song, I can only do so much from my actual controls, or I'm like throwing my phone to Amy to be like, hey, put on something better. But in this case, it is more hands-free. We are seeing the rising trend of states enacting laws against phone use by drivers. So I think it makes sense.
Which is good.
Yeah, like it's all going to a greater good. And in this case, it's just Spotify understanding what people are listening to and just bumping up their metrics.
I guess my question is why a new piece of hardware versus working on the in-app voice assistants to do those things.
Probably because Apple.
Yeah, why wouldn't you just do Siri, right?
Because Apple, I mean, Apple wants you to do Apple Music. So
right. Or podcasts, right?
Right.
So Apple would want you to say, hey, let's, hey Siri, listen to Grabcast, right? And then that's bypassing Spotify. So Spotify's trying to get their hook.
So not even being able to do within.
Whoa!
What?
What?
What's happening over there, Mike?
Do you have Hey Siri enabled?
Hold on.
Did I just use your?
Hey Siri just totally set off, and I don't even know what I'm listening to.
That was amazing. Please don't cut it.
I'm not editing that out, by the way.
So I don't know what just happened there, but I said a name of a voice assistant. Which triggered somewhere in the 10 devices that I have that might have been that assistant to play Gwen Stefani. And I don't think it was the BANANAS song, but it was pretty close.
Awesome. Well, it was great.
So,
but going back to the question, why, and maybe this is just proprietary within Apple, but being able within the Spotify app to say, hey, Spotify, play. And again, perhaps it's because you're in the Apple ecosystem, but...
Yeah, to our point last week, I really wonder what those antitrust lawsuits are going to bring. If all this development, all this investment, like in this article, they talk about how every tech company has their mark. We have the Echo Auto, we have the Google Car Assistant, we have the Apple CarPlay. If these antitrust settlements come into that say, hey, Apple, you have to let people use your stuff and put their fingers in your ecosystem.
But they are, right? I mean, as a CarPlay user, and, so you can write third-party apps like WhatsApp, Spotify, that can hook into Siri, that can hook into CarPlay, so that they work. And so I don't think that they're being... Like, I think this is, like, not necessarily antitrust, kind of area in the sense that Apple's allowing it. And Spotify's just being a little bit greedy. Like, they're just saying, we want more of the pie. Right. Exactly. And so that's the sort of healthy competition. But, yeah, I mean, I think the thing they're going for here, Kelly, is the people that don't have the hardware. So I remember, like, when my brother got a car, and this is probably about 8 or 9 years ago, when Bluetooth was starting to really work its way into, manufacturers' kind of specs and all that kind of stuff, so you could buy a car with it. But it wasn't like something that everybody could get. There was a company called Parrot that could put like a little Bluetooth third-party add-on that was installed by the car dealers, but gave you all of that same functionality. You could connect your phone. You could have conversations hands-free using a microphone that was embedded, but it didn't require the car to have its own sort of advanced electronics. And I think it's kind of addressing the same market, is sort of like all the people that have cars that don't have the stuff, the new hotness, they can still have voice control, they can still have Spotify playing, and maybe it even gives them a little bit more than just plugging in their phone and Bluetooth on that, because it's sort of bridging the gap between the old cars and new technology.
It still seems kind of odd to go, because you typically see going from hardware to apps. You don't really see the reverse trend of going from an app to hardware. I mean, Amazon.
Oh well, there's
did
always
with
Snap in their
Fire
spectacles.
Stick
They
and-
really did great there. So
Wait, who is that?
Snap, you know what's the name of
What's
this
Snap?
the
Snapchat.
crazy Snapchat and their Snap spectacles, whatever
Yeah,
the
they
hell
had
they
weird
called it.
glasses that they spent like a cool $1 billion on, and then
And
just rotted in
where
a
are
warehouse.
they now? Where are they now,
Like-
Mike?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're called the Snap spectacles. I didn't have
They're-
that wrong.
They're hanging
Snaps.
out in China with the bikes.
Pretty
And
much.
Absolutely,
The goats.
They are completely. So yeah, I mean, this is a weird play.
That said, so Spotify has trademarked the name not only Car Thing, but we also got Home Thing and Voice Thing. So
man.
who knows if they're going there or they're just being like, "Yo, we're gonna see what happens, and if this fails, no worries." But JD Power did a survey, and 76% of car owners said that they want some sort of voice assistant in their home and in their car. So people want it. And coming from somebody who accidentally changed their car Bluetooth language to French and just still hasn't gotten around to changing it back, like, this is something that's
Bonjour.
kind of nice. Oh yeah, anytime someone calls me, it like screams at me in French, and it sucks. But
But also, that survey was sponsored by Amazon.
oh really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That's so
Whenever
interesting.
there's
Well,
whenever there's
yeah.
a poll or a survey, I always look to see who sponsored it. And so, what are the questions? Who is the target audience to receive this survey? Probably Alexa users. Just putting it out there.
Just putting it out there. Well, I'll sort of close this topic by making a very tenuous link to
Okay.
Jamie Oliver. So I was
Oh,
reading in the
okay.
paper recently that Jamie Oliver, big celebrity chef, has to shut down, I think it's like 100 restaurants of various chains because they're going into administration bankruptcy in U.S. terms. Because the casual food market in Britain has sort of semi-collapsed. And it's collapsed because 1,300 people that work in these restaurants are out of work. And it's like a really big deal because obviously, Jamie Oliver's got his name all over it, all this kind of stuff. But they said the reason this happened was venture capital got into casual dining in the UK and essentially just flooded the market with like 17 different restaurants that all compete in the same market. And eventually people had enough. They don't eat out enough, like 10 times as much as they used to. So, eventually something was going to fall. And I think the same thing is going to happen here. Everybody's got a voice assistant thing. Venture capital is pouring huge amounts of money so that everybody tries to get into every space. But ultimately, in the end, like, there's just not enough room for the car thing, the home thing, what's the other thing?
Voice
And
thing?
I think it's just
Voice thing?
voice thing, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's all, I don't know if Spotify is going to win, but I kind of doubt it. They're late to the game. That a lot of people listen to it, but a lot of people listen to it as a music service, not as a voice assistant.
Right.
So I predict thumbs down on this one. As much as I like the idea.
So you're saying that just putting weird add-on technology that is connected via Bluetooth into things that don't need it is kind of a bad play?
I'm going to say bad play.
All right.
That play.
So on that note, maybe putting it in diapers isn't the best idea.
What? Diapers?
Smart diapers coming to a U.S. market near you, possibly in August.
Woof. Yeah, this was an article that
TBD.
Kelly, you brought to us via Vox, written by Michael Waters, that in reading it, I think we exchanged some harsh and straightforward words. I think I screamed about late capitalism for about 5 minutes. But yeah, we're in the diaper tech wars now, gang.
Get ready. It's happening. This was fascinating to me. The minute I saw it, I said I wanted to do this one just because I'm genuinely interested in who the audience is for this. And going back to the idea of the Spotify thing, which, Adam, you made your case. You want it. That's great. I cannot find anyone who wants this smart diaper app. And I pulled my Facebook team,
Mm-hmm.
but I haven't been on Facebook in a while because I hate it, so I didn't get as many responses. But the range of people, kind of all over, people who, my sister-in-law, who she has our 2-year-old twin nephews, and she's like, this is crazy, this is silly. Lots of comments about lazy parenting, because I just really wanted to know, and the only thing that anyone came up with was it could be great for when we're in our nursing homes. And my friend Shane's like, okay, let's start saving now, so Sarah can change our diapers because she's significantly younger than the rest of us. But that's it. And so reading this article, you get back to that idea that who is the audience for this? The audience is the corporation, because why? The birth rate has gone down for the past 7 years and they're not making money. So as the birth rate falls, so do profits. Therefore,
this is
smart diaper.
This is nuts. This is so crazy. In this article, they point to the Huggies, in this case, their competitor Pampers. Their way of recouping this loss is just by raising costs. They're like, hey, you know what? We're going to pump it up 4%. So Huggies, instead of saying, oh, we're going to make things more expensive, we're going to make it cheaper, try to, take back the market share that Pampers is pushing out. They're like, no, we're going to invest millions into a Bluetooth disc that you put in your baby's diaper. Man, this is
not
just
in it, on it.
Well, yeah, but like
close enough. I mean, anywhere within a 10-foot radius is dangerous as far as I'm
putting
concerned.
A weird peripheral in, I just don't.
Yeah,
I don't get it. I think in this article and in our conversations, it's to that point of there is no demand for this.
Right.
There's no reason.
Yeah. I have so many observations. First off, what is it that happened in Korea that gave them a good idea that this was like something they should expand from their trial in South Korea to the United States, right? I mean, the Koreans are ahead on certain things, K-pop, but I mean, I don't see them as being like revolutionaries in terms of smart baby diaper care. Other thing, I mean, I just love the sentence, Tweet Pee, a diaper sensor that slides into a parent's DMs when their baby needs to be changed.
Yeah, that was
like that's good. A sentence like 10 years ago. If somebody, read that, like they couldn't even interpret what that means. And then finally, kind of as the Grepcast sort of member that has probably changed the most diapers, I sort of see that this is one of those things which you see time and time again, which like new parents who are this idea of data driven. And I was like this when the kids popped out and I was starting to change diapers. I had an app and I was like keeping track of all this stuff, right? And like within 2 weeks, the whole thing just like died because it was useless data. It was meaningless. Like it was time consuming. It had no purpose. Like the data around what your kids eat and poop and pee, it isn't valuable to a parent. Like it is what it takes to get through the day. If you have the time to analyze peep and poo patterns of your baby, regardless of whether or not the big corporation is doing the data analysis for you, just the fact that you have an interest in looking at it just means you're focusing on the wrong things as a parent. That's my kind of bottom line on this one.
It's just to what we were talking about around voice assistants. Everybody has their voice assistant. It's a flooded market. I didn't think we would have a flooded market in smart diapers, but I guess we do. In this article, I think there's 4 different companies that are pointed out in that they have some sort of patent or some sort of product based around this idea. To me, this is like flavor from a bad sci-fi novel, not something that we're actually getting into.
Yeah, it's just going back to those trends of trying to make everything smart, which I do have issues with that name. And I mentioned this to Adam. I hate that these things are being called smart tech because the
inverse is
the
dumb.
inverse of that is dumb tech. And as we were saying, having a manual lock instead of a smart lock is not dumb. That's smart. So I kind of hate smart anyway. But yeah, even with this, my sister-in-law was saying, and she's not someone who I would say is thinking about the environment or anything, but she was like, yeah, if they want to make a better product, then make something that's more, eco-friendly.
Yeah.
And so I was surprised by that because I'm like,
worst.
oh my God, the culture change. It's actually happening because
Right.
she just doesn't, we don't talk about this sort of thing. So it's good to know that that's happening, and it's making more sustainable products as opposed to more products.
And I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, we try a lot, in this household. We have solar panels, solar thermal, you got an electric car. As far as we don't use plastic straws, we try to avoid plastic in all the grocery shopping. All we're doing is making up for the giant pile of diapers made out of, what do they call it, super absorbent polymers,
Right.
that we effectively, by raising our kids, have in some industrial waste pit somewhere. And the eco effect of diapers, and we really tried. We tried to use something that was reusable, but the sheer volume of pee and poop was just, you couldn't deal with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I would pay good money if there's something that needs to be smart. Then it can be smart and it can be eco. Right. That would be great. But yeah, this is just nuts.
Yeah.
Well, and it also has a bad effect on the overall market because diapers are already unaffordable for many people. And so if they're saying, hey, we're not making enough, we need to raise the prices, or even if people are saying, hey, yeah, smart diapers, definitely want on that train, the price goes up overall in the market, and then you're making the affordability issue even greater.
Right.
And now we get diapers in the digital divide discussion.
Oh yeah,
boy.
It's in this article. I'm really, really glad that this article really ended on this idea that through a National Institute of Health study, what was it? 1/3 of parents can't afford normal diapers. But hey, let's jack up the price because we added a Bluetooth dongle. This is also coming from the same parent company, Procter & Gamble, which is launching an AI toothbrush. Where a typical electric toothbrush costs $30, you know what? This one, it's going to start at $280 because this is our world. Cool, I guess.
Yeah.
Whew. Man.
Yeah.
if only we could leave Earth.
Yeah, and go to, a place where there isn't just a ton of junk. Oops.
Spoiler.
This one, our last kind of topic is more technology adjacent. But in reading this is coming from MI Technology Review, specifically written by Mark Harris. Space is getting dirty, gang.
Yeah, this is an interesting article. I mean, I as any Grebcast listener would know, I'm very interested in space, electric cars, the future, sci-fi, all this kind of stuff. But this article talks about, SpaceX and OneWeb, two companies, obviously a lot of people familiar with SpaceX, but it's a sort of a product that is new to them and a competitor, OneWeb, that are creating clusters of satellites. And we're not talking about, like a few satellites. We're talking about dozens, if not hundreds of satellites that are positioned in a low Earth orbit in order to bring the internet cheaply to the entire world. So it seems like a great idea, which is, let's try to get rid of Comcast. And certainly there's something there for all of us. And the cable companies and these, all of the mobile phone providers charging us huge amounts of money for small amounts of bandwidth. So more competition out there. And the way they're going to do it is to have a layer of small satellites. So there are some interesting physics here, which is the further up you go in terms of the orbit, well, the longer it takes for the packets to get to the satellite and back. So you want it to be low, but that means that these satellites are spinning very quickly around the Earth, and you need a lot of them to get coverage everywhere. And so this guy's basically saying this may not be the best idea, especially if any of you have seen the movie Gravity with Sandra Bullock that came out in 2013. So it's kind of an interesting sort of thing to say, well, look, maybe we should be a little bit more responsible about what we're launching here and the quantities of it.
Just like products on Earth.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But like, it's, to expound on that, it is not dozens. It is, so OneWeb wants to put 900 satellites. SpaceX has been given permission to put 12,000. So like, we're talking massive amounts of equipment. In this article, they also go through to describe that half of the debris in space comes from 2 events. Not 200, but just 2 times something happened. The first one was an anti-satellite test in 2007 by China, and then in 2009, it was a collision. 2 events created half of the space debris, and we're talking about putting almost 13,000 additional things in space.
And this isn't like, litter on the side of the street that's an annoyance. I mean, this is like even the smallest, tiniest pit, like they say, sort of something the size of a pinhead, because it's traveling at 30,000 miles an hour in orbit, or at least 2 objects could be sort of coinciding with each other at huge speeds. They can do tremendous amounts of damage. I mean, and this is something that the space station, they're constantly worried about, and trying to sort of figure out how to deal with it. I mean, there's sort of armor on the space station to sort of keep it from happening, but also this improved ground-based radar. I love this name once again. Great name. The Space Fence, that's coming up soon on the U.S. Space Surveillance Network, that should improve the accuracy and predictions about possible collisions. So, there's a lot of tech kind of going into it. But yeah, I mean, is it really a good idea? And honestly, like, what's stopping SpaceX and OneWeb and 10 other companies from piling in and just launching a bunch of satellites?
And it sounds like there's no real regulation here.
No.
They can just do it.
Yeah, I mean, up to this point, the limit has been...
Pause.
Yeah, they can. And
how?
I mean, the limit has been who has the ability and the technology to do it, right? So now SpaceX has broken the barrier. People are saying, with reusable rockets, you're suddenly able to launch things into space for 1/10 of the cost of what's there before. And in 10 years, it could be another 1/10. I mean, so the idea, I mean, now it's fun because, I got an email from a company called Big Ass Fans, and they sent up like a little thing into space on some satellite that says Big Ass Fans on it, and they're using it as a publicity stunt. Now that's not like going out into space junk.
And then we sent, like, Elon Musk sent a car. So, like,
at least that like went towards the outer reaches of the solar system, so no one's going to run into it.
But even when you consider that these 2 events created all this space debris, just adding even one more company doing that just increases the risk exponentially.
Well, and then, in case you weren't scared enough, Kelly, there's this thing called the Kessler syndrome, which is effectively what they kind of showed in the Gravity, the film, which was scientifically very inaccurate in a lot of ways. A lot of people had a lot of criticism. But I think it was kind of revolutionary in the sense that it showed the Kessler syndrome, which is when you have something that breaks apart into lots of little things. If you have enough of a density of other big things out there in orbit, it can start a chain reaction. And that chain reaction can cause satellites upon satellites upon satellites to collide with each other and create clouds and clouds of more debris. And there's nothing in space to stop it. I mean, there's no air to slow things down. It takes centuries or at least dozens of years for things to deteriorate and eventually kind of, fall to Earth. And so there's like this theory, the Kessler syndrome, sort of theorized by Donald Kessler in 1978, that you could make this happen so that actually you're trapped in Earth. That there's so much space junk that no one actually could get launched into space without hitting a bunch of space junk and then adding more to it. So then we're really stuck, which is not cool.
No. And then at some point, perhaps it all falls down, literally.
Well, I was going to say, this entire idea is the basis of a book I've been reading. I think I mentioned it on a podcast. It's called Seven Eves. It's by Neil Stephenson. It's a little bit more specific in that the moon explodes, but it really gets in and builds off of this Kessler syndrome of like what happens when you have too much space debris. And in this case, it's an apocalyptic event. Super, super interesting. But now I'm getting to read cool articles from the MIT Technology Review where it's happening and everything is broken and busted forever.
Yeah.
Well, don't worry, Adam, because the solution that's been proposed for the Kessler syndrome is something called the laser broom, a proposed multi-megawatt land-based laser that could deorbit debris, as long as the fragments are from 1 centimeters to 10 centimeters. So, technology will solve technology.
And then we'll get a VC boom where we have the laser Swiffer and then the laser Dyson. And then, But
don't worry, we'll all be eating out at casual dining restaurants and we won't have to cook. So it'll be all right.
That's true. It seems like at this point, a lot of tech industry as a whole really needs its own Hippocratic oath, because we've got all this, to be blunt, shit. We've got the bikes, we're gonna have the car things, we've decided. We've got the disposable diapers, we've got the debris fields, we've got that 50-mile plastic fatberg roaming around the ocean.
It's not a fatberg, just plastic.
You don't know if it could be a fatberg. Have they tested it?
I
just wanted to use fatberg, Mike.
We all want to use fatberg.
But at this point where, we've talked in the past about sunsetting products, and, even if your product is still viable, but sunsetting it ethically, what are we going to do? Like, just because we can, should we? I'm thinking, because we're in the Anthropocene. I'm going to mention this every single episode because it's valid. But what are we doing with all this crap that we're generating?
Yeah.
How many more pieces of evidence do we need that humans are garbage?
Well, to that point, in this article, a CEO, Payam Benazeta, essentially says, hey, there's a lot of self-regulation, and self-regulation in space is really, really dangerous. I would go one step further. Self-regulation in general is pretty dangerous. I can't self-regulate myself not to eat carrot cake at 10:45 p.m. Like, what's to say that...
And why would you?
Well,
is that what's in your beard?
Yeah. But, who's to say that, a company where they're getting VC investment after VC investment doesn't say, you know what, actually, let's stop making these cyber diapers and let's focus on something else.
Cyber cleanup crew.
Yeah. Well, I think so. I'll spoil the end of that book, Kelly, that I've been talking to you about, which I know you read halfway through, the Uninhabitable Earth.
Right.
And I was waiting for this sort of grand finale conclusion. And he sort of got there. Ultimately what he says was we as a humanity, as Earth people, we have to get to a point which is a sci-fi sort of conceptual theory of spaceship Earth, right? We as humans have to realize that we are on a spaceship. That spaceship is called Earth, that it has limited resources, and we need to take care of it in that kind of singular way that one would sort of take possession of your own car and say, I'm going to take care of my car, my house, all this kind of stuff. And, he doesn't propose any ways by which this actually happens, but he sort of makes the point that if technology is going to be the solution for all of these things, which is the sort of the general belief of the neoliberals, as he puts them, then sci-fi is the way that we can sort of look at this through the lens. And that is probably kind of where it has to start is, let's look at Spaceship Earth as being, the thing that we need to make sure that we can, travel in space from, by having regulations that do this, by having regulations around plastic and the environment and all these other things, because it is something with a finite set of resources. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I can't say I walked away from that book saying like, oh, that's a warm, fuzzy feeling. Like, I'm like,
yeah, it's going to take a lot. I like the idea, though, of as soon as you started to say it, I was like, Earth is a spaceship.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe, you know, we'll dive into this in another future Grepcast. There's a lot which I really love about the idea too, and I think it brings a lot of our sort of threads and themes together about, like, honestly, what can we do? And, you know, we can't all be Greta Thunbergs and sort of sitting out in front of the UN with little posters, but maybe there's a part of it there that we need to do in order to kind of get this message through to, you know, all 100,000 of our listeners. You know?
I mean, voting is a good start. Voting for good candidates. One small mission.
One small step. So, I know we left off again on a dour note, but that is the time that we have on this episode of the Grepcast. If you want to check out what we're up to, please give our websites a visit, tsp.me and tsp.space. And you can always check us out on Instagram at TSPLLC. In terms of plugs, what do we got today, Kelly?
My plug, speaking of humans are garbage, thanks for indulging me there. There is a company in Washington State that is about to do human composting, which I think is thrilling.
Whoa.
Yeah, you can become dirt, but isn't that right? Ashes to ashes,
dust to dust. Absolutely.
Yeah. I would like to be a part of someone's tomato garden one day.
Oh, yeah.
You might have some bitter fruit, but...
Maybe it's crab apples. I don't know.
Maybe.
How about you,
Let's see, what would yours be? That's a topic for another day.
Well, my plug, I got two plugs. Quick one is the MIT Technology Review. I love that magazine. There is a print version of that magazine, not just, you know, and it's sort of weird to get it, but because it's MIT and Technology Review digital. But it's a great magazine, actually. I've been getting it since I graduated. I think it's like free for alumni or whatever. But it's like a wonderful magazine that has... I think a very objective view of science and technology, and they have some great articles that we've seen. The other is a New York Times article plugging or about Brian Hoffer, who drafted the ordinance that bars San Francisco agencies from using facial recognition, which we talked about in, I think it was last week's episode. And it's a fascinating article that actually does show how one person can make a difference on many of these issues that we're talking about and that we're worried about. So another great plug.
Nice. Cool. Thank you. So until we talk to you again, stay cool.
Bye.
Bye.